So let's get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Anna Tate. I am a family law software product expert, and I am also an attorney. And later on in the presentation, we're going to have Mark Rogers, and he's also a product expert for family law software. But in particular, he is an expert in New Jersey family law cases. So what you are looking at right now is familylawsoftware.com. If you have not been to our website recently or have never been to our website, it is a wealth of information and self-help for users and also for billing issues and questions. So familylawsoftware.com, in the top right-hand corner, you can see we call you our pros. You are pro subscribers. So the lawyers, the financial professionals, paralegals, everybody, you guys are the pros. And so here you can look for updates. If you're a desktop user, this is a great place to look for updates, help, FAQs, tech support, the cloud edition to log in. Also for pro subscribers, if you ever needed to update your credit card, or you want to upgrade to cloud. So today, this presentation is going to be in Family Law Software Cloud. So if you are a desktop user, please stick with us. You will learn something new. It will look a little different, but everything is in the same order and the same functionality. So if after this presentation, you would like to upgrade to cloud, please come to our website and upgrade to cloud. You can also add, remove users, etc. So this is all available to you. And in the chat right now is my name, Mark's name, and our email. So if you have specific questions about your case or billing or need help, you can email us directly at support@familylawsoftware.com. If you haven't heard, Family Law Software is now a center-based company. Center-based is a case management and billing system. So if you are ready to dump your Leap, your Clio, your MyCase, please consider our new family of products with Centerbase. The other thing you will see here is live training. So today, this is our 11 a.m. New Jersey training. If you are available later this afternoon, we are having an advanced training. If you would like to join us for the advanced training, please go to familylawsoftware.com and click live training and see if you are free for that today or next month, because we're going to repeat it. All right, so why don't we jump right in? And so, right. How do you get into Family Law Software Cloud? So I am in my Chrome browser, and it is pro.flsgo.com. That has not changed. But what did change last week is we gave Family Law Software a facelift, and we have brought her into a more modern style. And this is my email and password. If this is your first time logging in, you can click Forgot Password, and we'll help you reset that. We don't keep your password. So if you forget your password, also click Forgot Password. So I'm going to log in. And if you haven't been in since last Friday, this is what Family Law Software looks like now. It is more modern. It has the same flow. Again, if you're a desktop user, it still looks like the desktop, but everything is in the same order. What we have added is File Manager. So when you go and you log into Family Law Software Cloud, by default, it's going to say no case is loaded. And that's okay, because you just go into File Manager and find your cases. All your cases should be there. I promise we did not touch or move your data. We just made it a little nicer looking. And so the flow of the program is still the same. You're going to enter data under the Enter Data tab through these hyperlinks. I still have to change my state to New Jersey. I think I might be in another state. So you enter your data under Enter Data. That data is going to flow into your reports. So when you're ready to print, you still go to reports just like you used to. All of your higher level tools are still located under analysis. It's still analysis. They're still in the same order. So you're going to see that. So your property division worksheets, alimony tools, they're all still there for you. And then under settings, you can change your state, assumptions, and configurations. So it's the same, it just looks a lot nicer. So why don't we jump in and let's look at File Manager. Why are we calling it File Manager? So for those of you, especially if you have multiple lawyers or multiple users that use family law software, this is really for you, especially, and even if you're a solo attorney, but you have a ton of cases, like I have over 200 cases, this is going to make your life so much easier. So when I open up File Manager, these are my files. So you will only see attorneys' names here. So, if you are a paralegal and you see the attorney's name there, that's perfect. That's exactly what you're supposed to see. We are organized by professionals. So if I click Select Pro, I can switch to any lawyer in the firm. So remember, we manage the files based on lawyers and professionals. That's how we organize them. They're the ones that create the work product. And what is new is, again, 200 files is a lot to go through. Now we have a button called All Firm Files. So again, for multiple lawyer firms, if you have that, you can search all of the files together. So I can search like for the Smith file. And I assume if I have that many files, then anything that mentions Smith is now brought up. And this will search across all files, all professionals. Okay. The other thing that we have in family law software is, so these are my files. This is what we call shared files. If you didn't know, family law software allows your clients to go online and enter their own data. So they are able to enter the kids' names, the date of birth, the house address, and it will populate your CIS statement. It will populate all of your reports. And so if you want to give your client homework or empower them for efficiency or for cost savings, these are files that I'm currently sharing with my client. And one of the things that you as the lawyers requested is, how do we lock them out? We literally will lock them out. We've got a padlock. It turns red. That means that my file, Christy, she can't enter data anymore. She's done. I've locked her out. If I want to let her back in, I would click this and it will let her back in. So now Martha's locked out and all of my other responsible clients are still entering data. And I can open their file and see where they're at. So if you hadn't been using client data entry for a number of reasons, this might be one that will push you over the edge to try it again. You can also archive files. So if you, again, so remember I have over 200 files. These are obviously not active cases. I might want to put them to collect some dust outside of my active cases. Something else that you're going to notice is each file, there's like these little vertical ellipses. If you click it, you can rename your file. So before, you used to get stuck. Once you named a file, you got stuck with that name. That's no longer the case. It's really easy to fix. You can look at the history of a file. So if you're a managing person, you can look at who's been touching the files and who's been actually working and who has not. You can email files as well. All right, enough about that. Why don't we start a new file and let's start entering some data. So new. So let's start from the get-go. So you log into Family Law Software and you want to start a new file. You click File Manager, which is where we just were, but I wanted to show you again. And then you click New. So by default, a new file is only your file. If you want your client to enter data, which we just discussed, you would click Register Client. In my case, I don't want my client to do anything. And so I'll just like have Anna. And New Jersey. So I would change this to New Jersey. Yours would already say New Jersey, but if you're, where's New Jersey here? New Jersey. But if you also practice in New York, you could change that file to New York very easily. This is my file name. And then the case name is going to be Rogers v. Rogers. All of this could be adjusted. And then I click Create the new case file. All right, when I click Create New Case File, it jumps me right into the most popular tool that we have, which is child support. And then I'm going to tag in my partner, Mark Rogers. He's going to come in now to go over New Jersey specifics. But again, you start entering data here, everything else is the same. And let's see if Mark is ready to jump in.
I am. How is everyone today? I see a lot of familiar names. You have to excuse me if my voice is a little ragged. I just survived COVID, which I was hopefully not going to do before, but at this point, I believe that we're all set to go. And let me move a couple things around here. So you should be able to see my screen now. Anna, is there any problem at your end seeing the screen?
I do see your screen, and for the users, Mark has opened his own file, so now you see Taylor and Blake. So thanks, Mark.
Okay, thanks. This is a sample file. It's all fictitious data. You can open this same file in your software anytime you would like. If you go to the settings, you'll see a sample file link right there. So you can open this very same file that we're looking at and play with it, make changes, etc. So I'm going to go back to the enter data section, and Anna showed you that you end up by default on the child support calculator. I'm going to come back to that. And I want to emphasize that even though we put you on the child support screen, you are not required to start with child support. You can start anywhere and begin your data entry anywhere on any of this list. So let's take a look at this case information statement. I know a lot of you have used the software previously, so some of this will be basic. Others may not have used it a lot. So I need to go over at least some basics for the newer folks. The bottom line that you look when you scroll through these screens is you're going to see some fields that are blue and you're going to see some fields that are yellow. Yellow is for you. Yellow is where we intend you to type your data. Blue is where as the software telling you that we've carried this data from somewhere else in the software, or perhaps it was something that the software totaled. Some other function within the software created the data that's in that blue field. So generally, you let the blue fields do their job on their own. The software fills them in. You can override blue fields if you want or need to, but generally we prefer that you don't do that. If you do override them on, let's say, a data input screen, the output may look different than the data input. So we really emphasize try to stay in the yellow fields when you're doing your data entry, and try to let the blue fields do their own job for you. And so that's one of the very basics about our software is yellow is for you. This is obviously I'm under the CIS heading. There's some help information at the top. There's videos about some basic data entry as well as some written help if you need it. You can now, this is a fairly recent addition, you can add a description of the current file. Let's say it's draft for discussion or initial case filing or initial CIS or trial CIS. You can make a notation about what the purpose of that file is. As Anna showed you earlier, you can add a case name now instead of just a file name. So if let's say I have historically, I move through, I have an initial CIS, I then do an updated CIS for a motion. I later do an updated CIS for trial. All of those files could be located under the same file name, case name, even though they might have different file names. So when you set up a case name, all files related to that case can be found together within the software's function. So that is a new function. And as well as this one, just labeling maybe in more detail. The rest of this is pretty straightforward. You may see sections where you need to open it to see the full section. So I've clicked the first party's information, and you'll see all the yellow fields related to their input. And in many cases, you'll see this little green square. This is an additional screen, or what we call more info screen. So if there's really something that doesn't seem to be present that you want or need, you might want to click this green square, and that'll open up, in this case, a detail screen just for this party Taylor. And a lot of the same information is available there. One thing that we offer in New Jersey that we don't offer in other states is you can also change, especially if you're in North Jersey and you have clients that live or work in New York State, that work in New York State or New York City and pay wage tax there, you can actually ask the software to use its powerful tax functions to calculate the wage tax as well as non-resident New York State tax. So that's one setting that's only available if you go into this submenu. Anytime I'm in a submenu and I'm done with it, I can just use my browser's back button. That's this button up here at the top. I'm going to go back. And so now I'm on that party's details screen. Each party has their own screen. They're identical. There's the same inputs for both, all pretty basic. Yellow fields that you type or enter your data in. I'm a lousy typist. I won't torture you by making you watch me type, but you can see that some of this has been filled in already, and that is the stuff that the software carries in. This comes from the professional information, and it applies to all cases. If for some reason I wanted to change that, I can, in this case, simply uncheck this box, and now you'll notice the fields are all yellow and I can type in whatever I want. If I'm tired of typing it every time, I could just pull in whatever I had in my professional information. If I need to change it, you can click this link to change your professional info. That's resident in every file. It'll put your name and address, your firm information, your bar number, everything else at the top of your CIS automatically. We do have a space for the other party's attorney, although most New Jersey forms don't actually include, I don't think, both attorneys, but if you need or want to, you can actually fill that in as well. Otherwise, we would move through the menu and just make our selections. This one's actually now starting to look like a CIS. You can put a notation at the top. Obviously, I put one in here that says it's a draft. Here's that same professional information carried in again. Here's the information that was entered when the case was created. So all that's been carried here automatically by the software. It does not need to be retyped. The yellow fields, again, are ones that you can type in directly. We use today's date, but very often for a CIS, you might need to change that. You simply uncheck the box, the field turns yellow, and now you can type in whatever date or you need for your filing for your date of statement. Otherwise, it does default to what we call the system date, which is the date your computer shows usually in the bottom right-hand window. About 6 years ago, they changed this. Used to have check boxes. People got mad at us when the check boxes went away, but honestly, we had nothing to do with it. That was the AOC, and the Supreme Court made that change. What we did to allow you to make it look like the older CIS is allow you to type in a left justified X, so it'll work like the old-fashioned check boxes that were still there 6 years ago. Or you can actually type in, text data as you want or need to. So this is just one little feature that makes it a little bit more like what you may be used to seeing. There are functions that allow you to customize your CIS all over the place in the software. One of them is what I refer to as a page note, and that's when you see this blue button with the word note. You can click it, and what it does is gives you a single line notation, and you can type in whatever you need about, maybe you want to address something about this party or both parties, you could add that in. If you need more than a single line, you can click the edit function to the far right. That's this blue button. That opens up a text box. You can type your brains out into this. You could type as much or as little as you need. I know a few attorneys who like to sneak in extra information because of the page number limitation on motions. They were slipping in information through notations within their CIS where there was no page limit. So some people use it for that function. But typically you can just type in whatever additional note you want. And if you want it to stand out, you can make it bold. I'm just going to click cancel because I'm not going to actually add a note. You can also, by the way, copy and paste. So if you had information you've already typed in a letter or a document, you can copy it. And then when you get in this dialog, you just type Control V as in Victor and paste in any of the information that you may have already written in another document into your CIS. So I'm going to click cancel. And again, that was this single line is what we start with when I click note. If I don't want my note anymore, I can click this red icon. It'll delete that line. I'll just confirm the deletion, and now it's gone, and you don't need to deal with it at all. This is an example, this red field, of an override, which I told you typically we don't like you to do. However, there are some exceptions. I get this one a lot. Let's say this child, Kim, we ask you who the PPR is for purposes of child support, and we use that PPR designation as the resides with person. However, that may not be true. Maybe the parties do have somebody as a PPR for child support they've agreed to, but they reside possibly with both parties. So you can drop into these fields and type in whatever you need. I can type in grandparents. I can move whatever I want into that line. Or if I decide I don't want that anymore, I can delete it, and the software should return to there it is, it's copying the PPR back in. So you can make those sort of overrides. We invite you to make simple ones like that, but we don't recommend making changes in the middle of a stream of data input for expenses or income. If you start making overrides, you could throw everything off. And then again, what you may see is some information that was on screen that does not end up in your printed document, especially if you make changes on the document preview and not in the data entry area. So generally, overrides are bad, but when necessary, you can make those changes yourself by simply clicking in the field and typing in what you want. There are a number of these add functions, add additional kids if you need them. And this is a reorder button. So if I wanted the Reese child to be the first child, I can just select Reese and move him up and say, okay. So wherever you see that button, you can swap the order that things appear in. And there's a couple more notation buttons down there. So that's the case information. Miscellaneous information, very straightforward. I'm not going to really spend any time here. I do want to note that there is also a footnote function you can use anywhere. The footnotes are accessible through these blue icons to the right of the line. If you see one like this one, I'm going to zoom in for you here. That's another big cloud advantage. You can zoom in with the cloud, make it bigger. So here is a zoom of the footnote function. I can open up a footnote, type in, copy and paste in whatever I want. If I don't want a footnote, I can also just say it's an estimated number, and you'll get a superscript EST type next to your number when you print your form. You can make a footnote bold, or you can use the footnote dialog simply as a reminder for yourself and not as a footnote. So those options will appear, and they'll be the same anytime you click that footnote option. You'll be able to make those kind of adjustments. I'm going to click cancel. And again, I got there by clicking on the footnote button. Note that here's another footnote button, but it's got, instead of the 3 dots, the speech bubbles are filled in. This is an indicator that there already is a footnote here. So if I click that, I can then see the footnote that was already entered for that particular item. So the footnote icons will look different if there is a footnote or not. So I'm going to zoom back out now a little bit, make it a little easier to see. And that's the footnote function. You'll see these all over the place in the software. They allow you to customize your CIS without having to export to a Word document. If you use the page notes and footnotes, you'll actually be able to do a lot of really good customization on your CIS without ever having to create a separate file or worry about editing somewhere else. There are a few things about our software that are different than other products you may have encountered in the past, and I want to highlight those while we're talking about the CIS today. One of them is on this CIS income screen. You'll see that we're on, by default, we're on a link called CIS income, and if I scroll down, it's the standard stuff you're used to seeing. Last year's income, last 3 pay stubs, year-to-date earned, and year-to-date unearned. And then finally, at the very bottom, the additional information. So those sections are the same as you're used to seeing on your CIS. There are inputs up here for the same sort of items, but these are generally used by accountants, CPAs. Sometimes they're used by the clients. This actually more closely tracks what the clients would do for their data entry. We don't recommend that you use the full income inputs unless you really need to. It would be very rare that you would need to, but mostly you want to crank out a CIS, you want to stay on the CIS income screen. There is a video that goes into this in more detail, what the difference between the 2 types of inputs are. If you're interested, please check out that video. It's a couple of minutes long, and the guy who built the software will explain to you why we have what we have and how it works, what's a little bit different about it. In some cases, you'll also see a button at the top We do allow you to put in income data and CIS data for both parties, especially if you're doing mediation or collaborative work. You may have a situation where you want to have input information for both parties. All you do is click the button to switch, and now it says I'm working on Blake's, or I can click back and now I'm working on Taylor. So you can easily change back and forth if you're doing that. Most CISs, that's not the case, but again, for mediation or collaborative work, it may come in handy. The last year's income tool, you can see that we filled in blue titles, but I made a change. I added the actual year as an override. You don't need to do that, but if you want to make those type of overrides, you can change it, the descriptive thing. Remember, I'm not changing a number or a total. I'm just modifying a label. And the blue field down here indicates that the software is going to total whatever was input up here. So you can ask the software to create the joint column together or add it together for you by clicking that, and then we'll automatically add them, or you can have it completely free and do all of your own data entry. We also offer a tool that a lot of people miss. It's this worksheet button. This worksheet allows you to use, if you want to use it, I can check it off, and the software will take the information from here. We move you through any tax return you might be looking at, tell you what line on Schedule C or line Schedule F to go to get that information. Same with all these lines. Further down, if you don't have a tax return, but instead have W-2s, you can enter the information based on the W-2s on any of these lines. And again, we give you the line numbers, and we update that as the tax forms change. So if you want to use that format, you can do that, and we'll carry it in. If not, you can I'll click back, and you can just type in directly into these yellow fields the way you normally would. Checkoffs work the same way as you would normally expect. Note button that I mentioned before. Another button that I haven't mentioned are the help buttons, and they're all over the place. They're these little blue question marks. They can be very helpful and quick. In some cases, you'll see a more help button and with even more detail. So if you have a question about a data entry area or a line or something we're asking you, please feel free to click on those buttons. You can't hurt anything, and you may help yourself and get a quick answer that will resolve a problem. We have spaces in the next section for inputting both parties' information. If you're doing a litigation CIS, usually you're only going to have one party, so you can just stick to one set of columns here. You put in the information, and we count the number of weeks based on the dates you give us, and we'll do the totals based on all of that information. So really what you're putting in are the dates, the pay period, make your selection, and then put in the numbers right from the pay stubs. We'll do the rest and do the averaging for you for that section. Scrolling down further, year to date, there are some controls here to draw in information from the full data entry. Remember the data entry I mentioned up here at the top. If you did have a case where some of that data entry was already done and you want to carry it in, you can check these boxes and carry it in. Again, I don't recommend that. Normally, you're going to leave these unchecked and you're going to march right through the screen and do what you like. There are some screen instructions. For example, you must enter 2 from dates in order to use this section. So here's your 2 from dates. We'll calculate the number of weeks. You fill in the information. And we'll do the totals. So all pretty straightforward there. The unearned income works the same way. There's a couple notations that'll pop up. If you're not doing property division with the software, you can ignore them. But what these notations are telling me, by the way, is somebody entered a cash or investment asset, but never specified who owns it or what percentage. So in order for the property division to work properly, we would need to know that how you want to split that asset up, if it's going to be split up, or if you want to assign it 100% to one party or the other. If you're not doing property division, you can ignore these blue notations. That's really what they're for. Just a reminder that some of the asset information may not have been totally filled out. Rest of this, again, pretty straightforward. Yellow fields you type in. You might not be able to see it well, but it'll even tell you source, how often paid, and here's a $ sign indicating that what we're looking for in that field is a number. There may be situations where you want to use a number field, but you don't have the data to put in the numbers, perhaps because you haven't received it yet. So what I'm going to show is if I click in that field, and now I'll click this number key pop-up, I can actually insert text into a number field, which generally in most software you can't do. Numeric fields don't like text data, and text data don't like numbers. So this is an exception to that. You can specify any of these preformed categories. Let's say it's going to be determined later or TBD. So I'll make that selection and I'll say okay. And then TBD, oops, screen jumped on me there, sorry. TBD will appear in that field instead of a number. If I later change my mind, I can click the control again, and I can clear that special code and say okay, and it'll go back to just a normal field with no data or no text in it especially. So again, it was down there. The other thing you can do is if you have, let's say you have a cell that you want to bring, you're the paralegal or you're the boss and communicating with the paralegal, and you say, take a look at this field. It doesn't look right to me. If you want to highlight it, you can choose a color and say, okay. And then when I scroll down, that field will be marked pink to draw somebody's attention. It will not print pink, but it will show you on screen that that's a field you might want to come back to. So again, the way I got to any of that is I click in the field, click the number key, and I may use any of these things to set them. These are editable, by the way, in the settings. You can make your own text. If you don't like our preformed ones, there's a way to change them and add in your own special text if you want to. And if you have a question about that, let me know. I'll show you how to do it. It's pretty easy. I'm going to click cancel now. Excuse me. And that is the basic data input for this. Again, the additional info, we're giving you lines. If you need more a line, just click the note field and you can add as much notation as you need to. Otherwise, we give you either 1 or 2 lines in this section. And anything you've added, you can always delete if you want to. Anytime you click the red delete button, you'll be asked to confirm the deletion first before you get rid of it. I'm going to move on now to expenses, which is something else that's a little different in family law software than others. One is specifically Schedule A. We've wrestled with this over the last few years to get this to do just about everything that everyone has asked us to do. So what that means is we were asked, especially in higher end cases where there's multiple real estate properties, the ability to have you fill out a separate Schedule A for each property and then print your CIS with that separate Schedule A with each property, as well as, if you want, a summary of all properties. So you can choose how it's going to be formatted. If you don't want to break down, when you go to print your CIS, you can just turn off the function to list them by property. But if you do want them listed by property, that's the default setup, and it'll be ready to go. If you only add one property, obviously there's nothing additional to change there. But if you do have a case where there's more than one, you can do it. The other things you can do when you have more than one property is you can specify which party is paying those expenses. It can be, maybe the husband's paying the vacation house and the wife is paying the mortgage on the residence. You can make those kind of determinations. You can even split the expenses between the parties. Right here, it says Taylor's paying the expenses, but I could say, let's split them at 50-50 or 40-60 or any number I like. The percent paid by column will now reflect that. Or if I uncheck it, it should go back to 100%. There it goes, paid by which party. I'll say Taylor again. And so if I use that 50-50, I can still type in the grand total amount, but my CIS is only going to show 50% of that expense carried out. So that's what these functions are about. We do ask you to fill in who's making the payments. We do ask for additional information for financial planning or property division. You don't need to fill in all of those if they're not relevant to your case. If I'm only doing, let's say, a CIS and all I want is my asset information, and maybe the mortgage. I only have to fill in those lines. I don't have to put in the mortgage balance or have the software calculate the interest on the mortgage if I don't want to. Or you can fill it in. It's totally up to you. And you can also, for property division purposes, specify the percent of marital equity. Feel free to ignore that if you're not doing property division. Normally, just a label, the value, and the mortgage payments are the minimum that you're going to need, and then specifying who's making those payments. So this was the Lakeview Lane property. If I close that one, here's the houseboat property, and I can open that one. And in this case, those are being paid by Blake, and any expenses I enter here are going to be assigned only to him. I have all the same tools to split those expenses more if I need them. If not, I can just fill in what I need. And then there's a place to add additional real properties if you want them. If you click add property and decide not to use it, it's best to get rid of it. Otherwise, you'll just end up with some blank space on your CIS that you don't want. So you can add or delete them easily. And if you have a tenant expense rather than a real property, we have that same tenant expense for any given property, the tenant expense layout as well. So I'll click that to get rid of it. And so I'm going to skip ahead. I don't like to do, but I want to show you what happens. So once I have two properties here, when I go to print my CIS, I'm going to go over here to the left and I'm going to select reports and I'm going to select case information statement. Down here in the center is, where did it go? Here we go. Clear the checkboxes to print CIS expenses with a single Schedule A. So the way it's set up right now, I would not get a breakdown by Lakeview Lane and houseboat. I would only get all of the expenses for all properties added together. If I want a breakdown, I can check that box. And when I print my CIS, I will have a breakdown. Lakeview Lane expenses Schedule A will be separate than the houseboat, and both will appear. And then finally, if I want a summary of all expenses, in addition to having the breakdown, you can check the secondary box. So then I'll have Lakeview Lane, houseboat, and a summary of all expenses of Lakeview Lane and houseboat added together. So that's this control that's related to how you can print your CIS. If you just like the standard look, maybe you only have a single real estate property, there's no need for all that extra stuff. Just make sure these are unchecked when you print, and you'll see the standard format with a single Schedule A. But if you have a more advanced case with a lot more stuff in it, and you want that breakdown, you can easily get it simply by checking a couple of boxes here. So I'm going to go back now to the data entry, and we were on the expense section, and that's where the real estate properties were. The rest of it's pretty straightforward. Schedule B, transportation, is exactly the way you're used to seeing it. Nothing unusual there. I added a label up here to specify no kids. That's the type of override you can do at will. But again, normally what we wouldn't want you to do is go in here and start overriding numbers, especially where we're doing the totaling, because it may not make sense if you put in a total that doesn't match the what the software adds up. So overrides are okay, especially in text box areas, not so much in numeric areas. Finally, the Schedule C personal is different than some other software. Here's why. There's a couple different things here. One is we're breaking down food at home. Now, the blue lines here represent what actually prints on the CIS. For example, prescription drugs, food at home, restaurants, etc. The other lines are ones that are related to our specific budget that the software does throughout throughout North America. So it's a more granular, detailed budget than the CIS, and it does allow you to do a couple things differently. One is, if I want to create a separate budget for children's expenses, I can put a breakdown. Instead of just food at home, I can say 300 of it was for kids and 150 for the adults. And the software will add it together for me. When I went to go to print my children's budget, which is an option on the reports, you'd be able to have a budgetary information just for the kids if you want to ever do that. If you don't want to do it, you don't need to use these breakdown fields. I could have just directly gone in here and typed my, I'm going to change it to 550. It will be red. And this is an example of a time where an override would be okay. It's obviously not adding these anymore. It's showing me a red number, which is the one I've entered. The other option, if I don't like those red numbers, is I can just type my grand total on any one of these lines, the sublines. So I'll put in 450. And now when I clear this, clear special, it will go back and it shouldn't be an override anymore. It should carry down there. Let me see what happened. Clear. Oh, clear. Click to clear override. Sorry. There we go. So now I can use one of these lines and have it carry to the CIS line, or I could use them both. So either way, click in it, override if you like, or use the sublines. Same all throughout this screen. Here's an example of how we do adult and children. We actually have a line for manicure, pedicure. If you ever want to use our budget, you can use all those lines. Otherwise, everything can go on the hair care line like you're used to seeing. Our budgetary process is, again, more granular. There's more detail to it. Welcome to use it. We use it a lot when people ask us to take a look at a case. One of the first things we do is look at the budget, because you can see everything that's been entered in one spot rather than scrolling through 8 or 9 different CIS screens. But it's not necessary for just doing a CIS, and it's not necessary to use the breakdowns if you don't want them. So we looked at a couple different things just to reiterate on this screen. We do have separate Schedule A's if you want or need them. We do have a further breakdown in Schedule C for a number of items if you want to use them. If you don't, just fill in any of the blue lines, either by override or using one of the sublines. Assets and liabilities is the next section. It's pretty straightforward. I could switch back and forth between the parties. There's some information, help information at the top. Don't forget video help or standard text help that's available up here at the top. Place to put a page note at the top of your assets or underneath assets. And anything you entered, this has already been filled in because I entered it, the expenses for these properties on the expenses screen. So they've automatically been carried over, as well as the property values I entered on the expense screen. So the software will transfer that information into the form automatically for you. Other things that we haven't broached yet in this case, like bank accounts, would have to be entered directly here. I can move from field to field. I prefer my tab key. I can move very quickly across the screen with my tab key. You can also just use your mouse and click in any field you like. Pretty straightforward on the rest of this. Here's my footnotes. Here's my more detailed information screen. One of the things you might want to use on that more screen for some assets is if you click it, I'm now on the investment data entry screen for the Bank of America. And if there's some reason I don't want this particular asset on my CIS, but I do want it in my overall financial plan, number 18 down here says, check this box if you don't want it on the CIS. So you can actually have data in your file, but remove it from the CIS simply by checking that box. You can also specify an asset as a child's asset, so it doesn't really get assigned to either party. Most of the rest of this stuff is more for financial planning or detail, but there's a couple of these controls down here at the bottom for the CIS. And again, the way I got there, I'm going to click back. I used the green more info button to the right of any asset line, and I can go in there and use those additional functions if and when I need them. It's pretty rare, but it actually helps sometimes. Especially I've had some where folks have a business. They don't want the business listed as an asset. They just want the income from the business. So you can put a business in and use it at the entry as the asset, but you don't have to have it print as an asset when you're doing those sort of inputs. Nothing else going on here that you haven't seen before. All the sections open up. You just click add and you can add them in. We're doing the totals for you. Statement of liabilities, same thing. If there's a mortgage, we've carried it in here for you already for both properties. Other long-term debts you're going to add in, and we'll do the totaling at the bottom. Finally, there's the F and G statements. We give you 4 lines. If you need more, click the text box, and you could have pages and pages of information that you type or copy and paste into directly on that screen. And the rest of it's just check boxes, and we put the party's name there. let's say I'm all done with my data entry now. What I would go to is reports, case information statement, and just scrolling through quickly, whose CIS am I printing? And remember, you can do one for each party. Where do I want my footnotes? I recommend at least trying the third option next to each item. That way the footnote can appear directly on the CIS next to the item it's referring to. But you can do it term paper style and have it all at the end of a CIS, or you could have it at the end of each section. For example, at the end of the income section, all the income footnotes could appear. But generally, I find this third one to be the most helpful. The instructions were added to the CIS in about 2016. They're primarily for pro ses. A lot of our customers didn't want them, so we allow you to take the instructions in or out that opening pro se instruction section. If you don't want it, you can simply uncheck the box and it will not print those instructions when you print your CIS. I earlier went over, do you want a breakdown by real estate properties individually, or do you want them all together? Do you want a summary of all properties, et cetera? Or do I just have a single Schedule A? I'm leaving everything unchecked. I'm actually going to have them print separately with a summary so I can show you what that looks like. Here's a blank CIS, which I can load up. It actually goes out to our website and allows you to print or view a blank PDF if I wanted to. And oops, wrong screen. I beg your pardon. Okay, I'm back over here. These are print previews at the bottom. I can see what a section is going to look like before I print it by clicking on its print preview link. And this will give you a general idea what it's going to look like before I've ever committed to any sort of print. In some cases, you'll see this line that says link. Instead of you changing the clothing here, which means that you would have one number for clothing in your data entry and another one on your output form, we give you a link to go back to where that clothing data entry was originally done, and you can easily zip back, change it in the proper place, and that way everything will remain consistent. So again, that's the print preview, and each section of the CIS has its own print preview. You can print only a single section of the CIS. If I just wanted the expenses, I can click just that, and that's all that will print. If I want everything, I can leave that checked. Unlike the desktop software, the printing from this cloud is only done by PDF. So if I'm ready to print my CIS, I click the PDF button. The software in the background will generate a PDF of the document. I have two screens. I'm dragging it in from my other screen here. So here's my CIS filled out top to bottom. I do want to point out what that real estate section looks like. So I'm going to scroll down. Here's my Part D Schedule A. Here's the Lakeview Lane property. Here's the houseboat property. And then finally, here's a summary of houseboat and Lakeview Lane added together. There's an example of the superscript EST that I added for that line. And I don't know if I have a handy footnote to show, but the footnotes in most cases would show right next to the item. And if you make them bold, they stand out even more. So that's how you do printing. If I'm happy with this, I can click File, Print, and get paper right from this menu, because this is local. The PDF is on your computer, not up in the cloud. And you can print it from this screen, or you could just store it away or attach it to an email, whatever you'd like. So this is how you print everything from our cloud. It doesn't even have to be a report, by the way. You could print any screen in the software by clicking PDF, and we'll create a PDF of that screen. So that is, oh, Gary's telling me my CIS is not showing. Is it better now? Let me see. Oh, I think that was the blank CIS, and I apologize for that. Let me see what's sharing here. Bear with me. Yeah, it should be sharing. Okay. That's the CIS. I'm just about out of time, unfortunately. So what we're going to have to do is go through child support really quickly, but that's okay. Most of you are familiar with it anyway. Child support guideline is this form, obviously, that we're ultimately trying to print out. In our software, you do not work on this grid. We fill this grid in for you and create it in the background. What you do in our software is go to enter data, child support data, and then we give you these screens to do your data input. We've added a quick data input area. So right now, this one is limited to just children, taxes, wages, and other income, a couple other things. They're optional, but obviously not everything that affects child support is in the quick section. More often, you'll use the complete section. That has all of the data input areas for child support that covers 98% of any type of child support calculation you're going to want to do in New Jersey. You open a section here by clicking its arrow. The data fields are yellow, indicating they're set up for you. Name is optional. We really recommend the date if you have it, because we use that for tax analysis, phasing out child tax credit, phasing out child care credit, things like that. You must specify a PPR. We hear all the time, nobody's PPR, it's equally shared. The guidelines can't work unless somebody is specified as PPR, so you have to choose a PPR. If you choose neither, then that child will not count for child support. So it really has to be one of the primary parties. If you have an equally shared case, you can run scenarios where maybe you would run it first with Taylor as the PPR and Blake as the PPR in another calculation. So you can make a version of the file using different PPRs, but you can't have more than one PPR or no PPR. You can change the tax dependency. We automatically choose the children as eligible or read this date. If they're over 18, we would not count them as eligible. You can force them to be eligible, even if they're 21, if they're blind or disabled, and they are counting for child support, you just check the box. If you're doing an other dependent deduction in New Jersey, where you're getting a deduction for additional kids, you can simply uncheck this box, and now we'll change this child, Kim, would only be treated as an other dependent deduction of Taylor and not as a child of the current relationship. Notice here now we're only computing support for one child because Kim is an other dependent child. So that's how the other dependent deduction works. In the software, it's a really simple checkoff. Typically, you'll want to add a little bit more data to your other dependent deduction. If you do, there's a link to bring up the other dependent deduction screen, and you can add in the income for the other party, any other additional information you may have about their financial situation. We will then calculate the other dependent deduction automatically based on that information. And if you want a worksheet for the ODD, there's a link on that screen. And here's a ODD for Taylor. And actually nobody specified, so it's not going to show that, but you can get a separate worksheet. It'll say other dependent deduction worksheet, really just an exhibit. So that's the children's section, except for overnights. Overnights are obviously critical. I like annual, but you can put your overnights in weekly if you'd like. And we also have a calculator to help you switch the overnights or tabulate them, if you will. You can put in 2 overnights per week. I'm using my tab key, another 6 during a month, and Mother's Day, Father's Day. Let's say there's 5 holidays, and now the software will do all that computation for me. I say, okay, and that information was carried in here and placed in automatically. So that's this blue calculator icon to the right. We have a more info for a little more detail on the kids, as well as a delete if you change your mind and want to get rid of one. So critical section, who are we calculating support for? Who is the PPR? Who is taking those children as their tax dependents? Are they eligible? Are they other dependent children? All that's handled in this first section. Additional sections, I'm still on the other dependent screen. I'm sorry, I'll go back further to where I originally was. And that's this children's screen is replicated again in several spots, but it's the same and it doesn't change when I look at it in a different view. It's just a different door into the same room for adding children. We automatically choose split shared custody, and based on the age of the children, we do the teenage adjustment automatically. You can see details of any of those calculations by looking at the worksheet, and you can override. Right now, the software is seeing that at least one of the kids, the teenage adjustment should apply. And so I've got it selected. And if I want to see, the software has got this child, instead of 14.6%, which is the amount in the rule, we're saying only one of the two is over age 12. So we're doing the adjustment only in half, 7.3 instead of 14.6%. If you don't like that, you can click in the field and override and put whatever percentage you want. Otherwise, we do it on a pro rata basis when there's one kid that is not necessarily teenage. And if I don't want the teenage adjustment, even though the software looks at the dates and thinks that it would apply, I can simply uncheck it and say there should be no teenage adjustment. This is a modification, not a new case. Okay, wages and filing status. Very simple. Add in your wages, specify how they are paid. If you don't have a clear number, you can also use our sub calculator. When I click in a field, you'll see this calculator icon, and this will allow you to use the software's built-in math capabilities to break it down for you. Let's say the annual salary I got was $77,345. I hit my tab key. The software will show you all the breakdowns. Another option is to do it year to date. So far, this party's gotten $43,987 between the beginning of the year and today's date. I'll say okay there, and the software will then take that information and convert it into an annual number for me. Hourly wages can be input separately, as well as you can add as many wages for either party or both parties as you like, and specify their tax filing status. Other types of income can be put in the wage-like income section. We give you some prefix categories when we know they're not being used for child support purposes. They will still appear here, but you don't have to worry. We're not going to use public assistance or previous child support in your calculation. They're there because if you enter them here, they will appear in the budget to make the budget make sense, but they're not used in child support. So any of these you can use. We know certain of them are non-taxable, so we've already selected non-tax by checking them, the boxes for you, but you could type in your own amount and make it non-taxable. Here's the section for government benefits. You do need to specify who's getting the check and how much, and who's the source of that benefit in order for that to work correctly. So please do pay attention. Feel free to click the help if you're not sure. We also give you 10 lines to type in whatever you want. Here you can see I added a vending business in and specified a monthly number. So if you have a type of income that it doesn't fit in one of the prefix categories, you can go straight down the screen there. Deductions, moving through, we start with health insurance. We do the prorata if you want to. If you already know the amount, you don't want it prorated, you know the children's share, simply uncheck it. And now it's no longer blue and you can type in whatever you want. If you need help on visualizing that, there's a worksheet that shows you how we're doing the health insurance expense, especially if you want the prorata. The software will do the proration and show you how we're doing it automatically there. This is the screen, by the way, you'll see override if necessary. We only know about the kids and parents that have been entered into the file. We don't know about the kids and parents that might exist outside of this instant family in our case. So if these numbers are not correct, this is one where you see override if necessary. We're actually telling you to override to make sure it's accurate. So again, I got there by going to health insurance and then clicking the link for worksheet. Similar things we have for unreimbursed healthcare, childcare, and some of the other sections for alimony, paid, received, et cetera, are very standard. They're straightforward. One thing that we do automatically in the background is taxes. I don't have time to go into this detail, but the software has 5 different ways of doing your taxes in New Jersey for your child support case. We choose either of the first 2 for you, and that's because that's what the court software uses. They use either the Appendix 9H or the IRS Circular E. So depending on the data entry you've entered, we use either of those 2. If you read the rule at the end of Appendix 9H, it tells you when Appendix 9H cannot apply. So whenever any of those conditions are reached, we automatically bump you into the Circular E. The software has its own native actual 1040, which is not an estimate, it's an actual tax calculation. If you click it, you'll see a summary. And if you want details, you can see all 70 lines of our TurboTax type tax analysis that the software performs automatically in the background as you enter data. I'm going to click my back button to get out of that. Again, you can take a look at any of the details of any of the tax calculations, from the simple Appendix 9H to the more complex. You can choose whatever one you want. If you have your own tax numbers, you can use either end of year or year to date and type in your own numbers, and we'll use those as well. These sections are independent. I can use Appendix 9H for one party and Circular E for another. I can change this party's taxes without affecting that party's taxes, et cetera. And FICA and Medicare, we're just showing you that we're calculating those as well. You do not need to change the taxes. We're calculating them for you, but if you'd like to dig in, you can do that. And if you have more questions about taxes, I have a blog that I've done. Just let me know, send me an email. I'll be happy to share my blog with you on more about taxes. Next sections are income from investments. So if you have income that isn't, maybe you have rental income or pension income, there's sections to add that in. And then finally, a couple other sections, what we call the child support and alimony to use sections. Right now, by default, the child support calculation is being used, what the software came up with. If I've done a negotiation, want to use my own number, I can uncheck this, type in whatever I want now as the amount of child support, and that's the amount that will be used in the budget or other forms. Otherwise, leaving it checked, whatever you calculated above is what will carry. It's showing you the weekly amount. You don't have to specify an end, month, or date if you don't want to. And we also indicate, obviously, which party is supposed to be the payer. Similar section for alimony. You can say that there's already alimony in a case. You can specify whether it's taxable or non-taxable under the old or new tax law. And you can type in your own amounts there, and we'll use them in the child support calculation and elsewhere. And then finally, we have links to a few other tools that are related here, including the laws and guidelines link. So if you need to get out to the court's website and take a look, the rules are available with a single click there. So that I'm a couple of minutes over, but finally, the last thing I would want to do is go to guideline worksheet. I can do that by clicking this link, or I could go to reports on my menu and go to child support guideline here. And now here's my worksheet. If I'm ready to go, I can click PDF and create a PDF to print. I can review it. And if I want some of the backup worksheets, they're available here. Childcare, healthcare, self-support reserve, other dependents, et cetera. They're all available. And here's another link out to the laws and rules. So that's the child support calculator and the CIS in quick. If you have questions, need more details, I'm available to help with that. I've been working with the software in New Jersey for 14 years. And I'm still learning, but there's quite a bit I know, and I'm happy to pass it on to anybody who needs help. Okay. Yes, Anna put up in the chat how you can get support if you need help. Anna, you want to jump back in and take over anytime, feel free.
That's it. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us during your lunch hour. We really appreciate it, or almost your lunch hour. If you would like us to do more of these, please let us know. Also, if you would like to do one just on New Jersey child support, we're here to help you. The software is fluid. We are your resources. We are your guides. If you find something confusing, reach out to us. We might be able to simplify it. There are no silly questions. We're here for you. And thank you, Mark. And thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks. Goodbye, everybody. Have a great day. It looks like great weather in Jersey for a change. So enjoy.